which I think we've now fixed. If the people who couldn't hear properly previously are still having issues, please send queries into us by the GoToMeeting webinar panel on the right-hand side. So just briefly to start again, and just to reiterate, two very important deadlines are the abstract deadline on the 4th of March 2016 at 1 p.m. and the pre-proposal deadline on the 28th of April 2016, again at 1 p.m. If you wish to submit a research centre's proposal, you must submit to both the abstract and the pre-proposal deadlines. Again, just to repeat for people who didn't hear, my name is Phil Hemingway. I co-manage the Research Centres programme along with my colleague Siobhan Roach on the pre-award team, and our post-award colleagues Roisin Cheshire, Suzanne Foley and Elena Martinez will assist later in the webinar. For anyone who's not familiar with SFI webinars, the webinar itself will consist of a brief one-way presentation, which is one way. I'll talk through a number of slides, and if you have questions during the webinar or at the end, please do feel free to submit them via the GoToMeeting panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You can submit questions at any stage, so please just do them as they come to you, and we will post a link of the recording on the SFI Research Centres call webpage after the webinar. Briefly, to give an overview of what we'll discuss today, I plan to give details of the background of previous SFI Centres calls to run you through the main changes to the 2016 call relative to previous calls, to bring your attention to a number of important definitions associated with the Research Centres call, to talk about expectations of what we would expect new centres to look like and some important elements of the new research centres. I'll provide a brief overview of centre structure and how centres look in that respect. I'll talk about industry partners and funding, give some details of very high-level eligibility criteria, talk you through the application steps and review criteria, again give some high-level details on post-award reporting and monitoring, and just before the end of the webinar, I'll very briefly run you through some other SFI industry collaborative projects that you may programs which you may wish to consider. So briefly then, just to give you some details of the Centres programme itself, Agenda 2020 SFI strategic plan had an aim to develop a set of research centres which are internationally recognised, which attract international research talent and capital, and which attract, anchor and spin out related companies in Ireland. The first Research Centres call was launched in 2012 as an evolution of the previous CSET and SRC programmes, and the programme itself aims to both consolidate research activities across higher education institutes in Ireland and also to create a critical mass of internationally leading researchers in strategic areas. There have been two Research Centres calls to date. The first was in 2012, which resulted in 7 research centres being funded, and the second was in 2013, which resulted in 5 research centres being funded. You can see the logos of each of the 12 currently funded SFI centres on the right-hand side of the screen, and their funding represented a €350 million commitment from SFI over a 6-year period, in addition to a €190 million co-investment by over 250 industry partners. One important aspect of the research centres which you will see is that funded consortia, funded research centres, are typically made up of many or all of the leading researchers in the country in a particular discipline. If you'd like more details on currently funded research centres, please follow the link at the bottom of the screen. Briefly then, just to talk you through some of the main changes to the 2016 Research Centres call relative to previous calls. Importantly, the call is not thematic and it is open to all areas within SFI's legal remit. So the 2012 and 2013 Research Centres calls were thematic. The 2016 call is not thematic. Secondly, there is no limit on the number of co-PIs who can be involved in an application. This compares to the 2016 call, which had a limit of 9 co-PIs. Very importantly, however, you should note that we will be briefing reviewers to provide an equal evaluation in respect of co-PIs and lead PIs, in other words, the lead applicant. So it's important to think carefully while constructing your team of co-PIs. There's also no restriction on the maximum platform activities budget. That compares to the 2013 call when there was a maximum of 30% that could be associated with that component of the budget. I will talk you through what platform activities are later in the presentation. Applicants are specifically encouraged to attract contributions from other non-exchequer sources. Again, I'll talk about that later on in the presentation. There have been several changes to submission documentation, so there's changes, for example, to some section lengths within the call document. Funded investigators and collaborators will no longer be required to submit CVs, so this should reduce the administrative burden on applicants to the Research Centre's programme. We will be requesting a plan for how the Research Centre will transition to sustainability, and also we will be requesting additional details of education and public engagement plans. One other very important point, proposals must be clearly distinct from current research centres, and proposals or people considering applications in areas which are similar to existing research centres or could complement existing research centres should consider submitting to the Spokes programme rather than to the Research Centres programme. The Research Centres programme objectives are to achieve, maintain and enhance research excellence and leadership, to deliver significant economic and societal impact, to increase the level of industrial and commercial investment in R&D activities with existing Ireland-based companies, and also to help to attract FDI, foreign direct investment, to spin out new high technology startup companies, to transfer through licenses to companies based in Ireland, to transfer knowledge, expertise and know-how to companies based in Ireland, to undertake joint research projects with industry, to inspire, educate and train the future and current cohort of STEM students and researchers, to attract additional non-exchequer funding, and to engage the general public and equip them to understand and debate in areas of STEM. A number of very important definitions that you'll see constant reference to throughout the programme documentation are as follows. The lead applicant on an application will be defined as the scientific and technical lead and will also by default be nominated as the Research Centre Director. Subsequent to an award being made, they will also hold primary responsibility for the award. Co-applicants on the award should have a well-defined critical and continuing role. They will be expected to lead one or more targeted projects. And very importantly, again, I said it earlier, but just to reiterate, co-applicants will receive equal evaluation during the review process to lead applicants. A third category then are funded investigators, and these are members of academic staff undertaking a management role in a research project within the Research Centre. They should have some element of budgetary responsibility for a project, and the funded investigator designation should be a reflection of the level of input of an individual to the research programme being proposed. Some further definitions: an official collaborator is an academic staff member based either in Ireland or abroad, or a member of relevant non-academics, or a member of staff from a relevant non-academic institution, for example, a government department. Official collaborators should provide a focused contribution to specific tasks, so that they shouldn't be just listed on the proposal. It should be obvious what their focused contribution to specific components of the work programme is, and may not act as primary supervisors of team members. Industry partners are companies making a financial contribution to the centre as well as an intellectual contribution to the research programme. Again, it's important to reiterate it's not just a financial contribution but also an intellectual contribution to the research programme. The industry partner then is represented by the industry collaborator, who is the lead contact from an industry partner. And just a reminder that industry collaborators are not eligible to receive funding from the Research Centres programme. One final important definition is the centre budget. So any reference to centre budget refers to three components: an SFI cash contribution, an industry cash contribution, and an industry in-kind contribution. And in all cases, you should only refer to direct costs within an application. You should not refer to overheads either from SFI or from industry partners. In terms of centres' expectations, we would expect that new centres will have an edge over competing research activities worldwide and will have unique features and the potential to be world-leading within its domain. We would expect to see a clear demonstration of the added value of being funded as a centre rather than as individual awards. We would expect to see a lead applicant with a record of internationally recognised research achievement and demonstrated ability to lead major academic industry partnership initiatives. We would expect research centres to carry out a unifying research programme in areas covered by the remit of the proposed research project or the proposed centre. We would expect that centres will achieve the strategic goals shared by the host and partnering institutions, and also would stimulate public understanding, interest and engagement in STEM. For more details on centres' expectations, please see section 4 of the call document. In terms of the expected size of research centres, SFI expects that we will fund a range of centre sizes. We would like to see centres that have ambition and growth potential, and it's very important to point out that small and excellent is better than large and mediocre. Please also consider that if your project could be beneficial to an existing research centre or is in an area of an existing research centre, it may be appropriate to be a spoke within a larger centre rather than applying to the research centres programme. A couple of points then on the research centre structure. So all research centres will be funded on the basis of a hub and spoke model. You can see the hub here on the right-hand side graphic, which consists of operations at its center and various different platforms, as you can see in green, orange and yellow, and then a number of spokes surrounding the hub. So I'll just talk you briefly through each element of that structure, just so you know exactly how centers are made up. So as I mentioned, the hub consists of both operations and platform components. The operations component consists of the management, administration, business development, marketing and communications, education and public engagement, and IT technical support staff. Platform research then consists of core or platform research activities or technologies which are deemed necessary or valuable to the research centre's mission and are common across a number of targeted projects or which underpin the development of future targeted projects. Spokes, they're the little outlying balls that you can see around the center in the graphic, consist of thematically related targeted projects. Spokes can consist of either one or multiple targeted projects. So you can see in the example on the right-hand side of the slide, Spoke 1 consists of 3 targeted projects, while Spoke 2 consists of two targeted projects. Importantly, each targeted project must have at least one industry partner, but may have a number of different industry partners, depending on what the ambition and aim of the research program within that targeted project is. Importantly as well to note while you're constructing research centres bids, is that spokes can be added to research centres using the spokes program at a later stage. Moving on then to some details of industry partners. So each targeted project, as I mentioned, must involve at least one industry partner and can involve more. We would expect to see a mixture of large and small companies involved in the new research centres. Industry partners must provide both a financial contribution and an intellectual input into the research programme. Non-Irish based companies can participate, but the direct benefit to Ireland must be clearly demonstrated. In addition, commercial semi-state bodies are eligible as industry partners. Government agencies, charities and other not-for-profit entities are not eligible as industry partners, but could be involved as collaborators. In terms of the funding available through the call, SFI makes a contribution at a maximum rate of 70%. SFI can contribute between 1 and 5 million euro per annum in direct costs over the duration of the new research centre, that's 6 years. And there is a possibility to exceed this upper limit subject to match funding. For all centres, there is a minimum 10% industry cash contribution, and I stress that's a minimum contribution. We do see research centres exceeding and significantly exceeding this level, and also a minimum 30% overall industry contribution, so that's cash and in kind. In addition, funded research centres must maintain the minimum 30% cost share over the lifetime of the research centre. And just as a note, I mentioned other non-exchequer sources earlier in the presentation. Contributions from such sources, which are non-industry, non-exchequer, do not count towards the minimum industry cost share requirements. So just to give you some more details on what other non-exchequer sources might be, I have mentioned earlier that applicants are encouraged to consider the inclusion of contributions from other national and international funding agencies, for example, philanthropic organizations or other sources such as charities or not-for-profit organizations. So there are several benefits to doing this. Such contributions can provide an increased level of funding for the centre overall. It can assist in developing the sustainability of the proposed centre and also acts as a demonstration of the importance of a proposed centre to key stakeholders. Importantly, however, please note that such contributions will not count towards industry cost share, as I mentioned before, nor will they leverage additional SFI funds. I'm briefly just going to run through some high-level eligibility criteria, but please note that there are some additional and more detailed eligibility criteria outlined in the call document. So an applicant group consists of both a lead applicant, that would be the centre director if funded, and also a number of co-applicants. In all cases, each must have a minimum 10 senior author publications, must hold at least one independent research grant, and combined they must have secured at least €10 million in competitive research funding between 2010 and 2016. Lead applicants can only be named on one application, and co-applicants can be named on up to 2 applications. Targeted projects that connect to existing research centres may be supported either through the Spokes programme, if planning to join an existing research centre, or the Centres programme, if you envisage a joint spoke with an existing research centre between that and a new research centre. But please note that research centre proposals, which are not clearly distinct from existing research centres, are likely to be returned without review. Applications for funding for a particular spoke may not be under review for both the Spokes and Centres programs at the same time, and the logic in terms of how many applications people can submit remains consistent in respect of existing research centres. So lead PI or directors of existing research centres may not apply to the 2016 call as either lead or co-applicants, and co-PIs of existing research centres can act as co-applicants or funded investigators. But please note that it's very important that you're aware that reviewers will be assessing your current time commitments in the context of committing to a new research centre. Briefly then, just to run through some key weaknesses of previously unsuccessful proposals to the centre's programme. I'm going to talk you through a number of the issues that have come up through previous reviews. So firstly, in some cases, review panels felt that not all members of the applicant group were internationally competitive. So again, this is very important in the context of the fact that the cap on co-PIs has been removed. Secondly, the case in some instances for a centre funding was not clearly made. So for example, there may have been an evident lack of synergy, or it wasn't clear that research centre funding would be required in order to achieve the objectives being proposed. Thirdly, the ability of the centre was questioned in some instances to compete internationally. So examples of why that was the case is because in some cases the scope was too broad. So again, I mentioned earlier that small and excellent is better than big and mediocre. In some instances, proposals were viewed as lacking in critical mass of excellent researchers, and in others, the unique aspects of proposed centres were unclear. Lastly, then, in some instances, there was a failure to demonstrate a strong potential for delivery of economic impact to Ireland, whether that was due to poorly developed business plans or because the collaborative nature of the partnership with industry was unclear. So, for example, it wasn't clear what intellectual input was being brought forward by industry partners and how that would feed into the proposed research programme. In terms of then the application steps and review process, there are 3 key application steps. The first is the abstract submission, which is not subject to review. The second is the pre-proposal submission, which will be reviewed by a combined scientific and impact panel, where scientific quality and impact will be equally weighted. And the third then step is the full proposal submission, which will be by invitation only. The review process for the full proposal submission will involve firstly a postal review, which will be a scientific evaluation only. There will then be an opportunity for applicants to respond to some of the comments of the postal reviewers, and proposals demonstrating scientific excellence will progress to the last stage, which is an impact panel evaluation, which includes a presentation from the applicants. A list of fundable proposals then ranked in the order of priority for funding will be the outcome of that panel meeting. Again, just to talk you through in a little more detail as to what's required at each step, I mentioned that everyone intending to submit a research centre's proposal must submit an abstract, which again is not subject to review. Abstracts must include details of the title of a proposal, the name of the host institution, the name of the lead applicant, in other words, the proposed centre director, and a scientific abstract of up to 200 words. There is a template for this on the SFI Research Centres 2016 webpage, and abstract submissions should be emailed to centres@sfi.ie prior to the 4th of March 2016 at 1 p.m. The second step then is the pre-proposal submission, which will happen on SFI's Sesame Grants Management System, and I'll briefly just talk you through the main components of an application to the Research Centres call at the pre-proposal stage. The first section you will see is the proposal summary, where you'll be required to supply details of the title, the requested funding, the duration, which will be by default 6 years, the research areas in which the proposed research program fits, and also you'll be asked to justify alignment with SFI's legal remit. You'll be asked then to give details of the proposed lead and co-applicants in terms of their current location, their percentage time commitment to the proposed new centre. You'll be asked to provide a CV using the template provided, and to give details of their publications and supervisory experience to date. For collaborators, that's funded investigators, academic collaborators, and industry collaborators, you'll be required just simply to list those in the format requested on Sesame. And importantly, you do not need to supply CVs for funded investigators, academic collaborators, or industry collaborators. The next section then will be the main body of the proposal, where you'll be asked to put in details of keywords, a scientific abstract, and a lay abstract. Just to remind you again, this year there will be no restriction on the maximum number of co-applicants, but each co-applicant will receive equal evaluation to the lead applicant. So please do consider this when you're constructing your team. You'll also be asked then in the next step to provide a profile of the applicant group in up to 3 pages, to provide details of funding history demonstrating that the applicant group achieves the minimum €10 million in research funding in the defined period. And you'll be asked then to give details of the research program in up to 5 pages, providing specific details on the overall vision of the proposed research centre, details of specific research questions to be addressed by the research centre, details of the current state of the art and how the proposed research centre will advance that state of the art, and details as to why the proposed research centre is required and what the competitive advantage of the team to deliver in this area is. You'll also be asked to provide references, an impact statement of up to 5 pages, details of a proposed membership structure if you propose to institute a membership structure. Again, this is only if applicable, and then details of a budget justification in up to 1 page. You'll also be asked to provide a summary budget using the Excel template provided on the Research Centres call webpage. Letters of support should be supplied using the appropriate template from each proposed industry partner and also from each organisation committing other non-exchequer funding if applicable. Finally, then you'll be asked to provide details of prior research funding of the applicant group, including a description of any scientific overlap of that funding with the proposed research centre proposal. The deadline for submitting pre-proposals is the 28th of April 2016 at 1 p.m. and please remember that all deadlines referred to are SFI's deadlines for receipt of documentation and that your individual institutions may have their own internal approval steps. So the deadlines refer to the deadlines for receipt by SFI of proposals, etc. The full proposal then full proposals will be submitted by invitation only following review of pre-proposals. There is a requirement for both scientific excellence and strong potential for impact in order to progress from the pre-proposal to the full proposal stage. And we hope that we will be able to invite to submit the full proposal in late July 2016 with a deadline of the 2nd of November 2016 at 1 p.m. Full proposals then demonstrating a high level of scientific excellence as defined by our postal reviewers will be invited to present to an impact panel in February or March 2017. The evaluation criteria that will be used for the Research Centres 2016 call is as follows. There are 4 primary criteria. The first is the team, where we will ask reviewers to assess the quality, significance and relevance of the recent research record of the lead and co-applicants, and also the strength and cohesiveness of the applicant group, including likely synergy in delivering research and potential for international leadership. Secondly, then, in terms of research, we will ask reviewers to assess the quality, significance and relevance of the proposed research, including value for money, and also the potential to advance knowledge and understanding within its own field or across different fields. The third criterion then, the potential for impact. Reviewers will assess the quality, significance and relevance of the proposed research's potential contribution to demonstrably support and underpin enterprise competitiveness and societal development in Ireland. And finally then, at the full proposal stage only, execution and delivery, where reviewers will review the quality of the plans for execution and delivery of the research programme and centre goals, including the appropriateness of the proposed milestones and deliverables. In terms of intellectual property management, it is the responsibility of the research body to ensure that centres' applications and centres, once they're established, are in accordance with national IP policy and also are compliant with state aid law. Intellectual property rights should be assigned to industry partners in a manner which reflects their contributions. Contracts and IP agreements should be executed within 90 days of the award start date. And finally, technology transfer offices within the research bodies are empowered to pursue the most advantageous commercial route for the research bodies. More details of intellectual property management are available at the link shown on screen. Very briefly, in terms of post-award reporting, I'd just like to mention that SFI uses a number of evaluation instruments for research centres. So on a monthly basis, research centres which are funded provide an update on industry contracts and also human resources. Every 6 months, details are provided of a KPI report via Sesame, and also a governance report is supplied. And then every year, research outputs, formerly known as census, and an annual report will be completed by each research centre. Every 2 years, there are site visits with an external panel come in to assess the progress of research centres, make recommendations, etc. And very importantly then, just to note, lastly, regular workshops are held with research centre directors and centre managers, which provides a good opportunity for new research centres to understand how all of the post-award reporting happens and to learn from each other. At the full proposal stage, applicants will be asked to provide targets for 15 key performance indicators under 4 headings: academic outputs, human capital outputs, funding diversification, and commercialization. And these KPIs are aligned with the objective of the Research Centres programme and also with SFI's overall objectives as defined by Agenda 2020. More specifically, these key performance indicators consist under the academic category of the number of journal publications and the number of conference publications. Under human capital, the number of master's graduates, the number of PhD graduates, and the percentage trainee departures with industry as a first destination. Under funding diversification, you'll be asked to set KPIs under the following headings: the number of participations in major EU initiatives and also the number of coordinations of major EU initiatives, the number of ERC awards to be received by PIs in the centre, the amount of funding from non-exchequer sources, and then 3 different metrics for cash in bank. The first is the actual euro value of cash in bank, the percentage cash versus the target committed by the research centre, and then the percentage in kind and cash combined. Lastly then, under the commercialization heading, you'll be asked to set key performance indicator targets under the number of spin-out companies to be formed, the number of Enterprise Ireland commercialization awards, and lastly the number of license agreements. Targets should be ambitious but also realistic and achievable. They should reflect the strategic and commercial positioning of the proposed centre, and assessment of KPI targets will form part of the evaluation of the proposal. Additional information on setting KPIs will be supplied to those invited to submit a full proposal. Very briefly, in terms of management and governance structures, all research centres will be required to establish an executive committee, a governance committee, a scientific advisory committee, and an industry advisory committee. So I'm not going to provide any additional details on those at the current time, but please refer to the link at the bottom of the screen for more guidance on metrics, reporting, intellectual property, and management and governance of research centres. A number of key timelines to be aware of. The deadline for submission of abstracts is the 4th of March at 1 p.m. The deadline then for submission of pre-proposals is the 28th of April 2016 at 1 p.m. Very importantly, you must submit an abstract if you wish to submit a pre-proposal. We hope to be able to invite applicants to submit full proposals in July 2016, with then a deadline for submission of full proposals on the 2nd of November 2016 at 1 p.m. The impact panel meeting we envisage will happen in February or March 2017, and we hope to work towards a funding decision for new research centres in April 2017. We'll shortly move on to our questions and answers session, but before I do, I'd like to just very briefly mention some other SFI industry collaborative programs that may be of interest at a very, very high level. The SFI Spokes Programme 2015 is for the addition of new projects to existing research centres and also allows existing centres to develop in line with new priorities and opportunities. There is no maximum or minimum budget on Spokes applications, but we would expect to see projects of scale coming into the Spokes programme. Again, I reiterate, if you are planning a project which is in some way similar or could assist or matches closely with an existing research centre, you should be submitting to the Spokes programme, not the Research Centres programme. There are two strands to the Spokes programme. The first is the rolling call, which is a 50% cash cost share, and whereby proposals are assessed based on their own merit. So applications are put out for review of scientific excellence and potential for impact, but they're not in competition with other proposals. The second strand then is the fixed call. This has a lower cash cost share requirement of 30% cash, but this is based on competitive review. So similar to the rolling call, each proposal will go out to international peer review. And following that review, there will be a panel meeting held in SFI where all of the research centres' Spokes applications will be ranked, and a number of them will be funded. So you're competing with other Spokes proposals in this strand. The deadline for the 2015 fixed call is the 10th of March at 1 p.m. And please note, for those people, researchers interested, that there is a specific advanced manufacturing strand where you can benefit from a lower cost share. It's a 10% cash cost share, 20% in kind minimum, and there are a number of additional incentives available to proposals in the advanced manufacturing space. And this is because we would like to encourage attracting proposals in this space. Secondly, then, of the three programs I'm going to mention, the SFI Industry Fellowship Programme funds movement of researchers between academia and industry. Fellowships of up to €120,000 are available. They can be for up to 1 year full-time or 2 years part-time. They are open to both Irish and international companies, so postdoctoral researchers, lecturers, professors, etc. could spend time in either an Irish company or Ireland-based company, or a company based internationally, or a combination of both if a company has more than one jurisdiction. I already mentioned that the program is open to all levels, from postdoctoral researcher up to professor level, and there are deadlines in June and December each year. Finally then, just briefly to mention the SFI Strategic Partnerships Programme. This is a programme which aims to foster and develop strategic partnerships where we would expect to see initiatives of scale with strong potential for delivering economic impact to Ireland. The cash co-funding requirement for strategic partnerships is 50%, and this programme is quite a flexible programme which is designed for projects which are not otherwise served by SFI programmes. This programme operates as a rolling call, so it is currently open, and it has a two-stage review process. The first is an expression of interest submission to SFI, which occurs over email, and the second then is a full proposal, which is by invitation only. We'll just move into the question and answer session shortly. So we're going to have a questions and answer session now. Following the webinar, if you have questions, please first consult the Centre's programme call document and FAQs. We do find that a lot of queries that people have are actually detailed in those documents. Secondly, the research offices within research bodies have quite a bit of experience of submitting proposals to the Research Centres call, so please do contact your local research offices with any initial queries, and subsequently then please do feel free to email centres@sfi.ie. Okay, we'll move on to the Q&A session. So I'm going to just put the voiceover on mute for a couple of minutes while we gather some questions together. If you do have any questions that you haven't already asked, please submit them on the right-hand side of the screen as shown. We will deal with as many of these as we can now verbally, and just a reminder that we will post a recording of the webinar on the Research Centre's 2016 webpage in the coming days. So I'm just going to go offline now for a couple of minutes to collect up some queries, and we'll come back online in a couple of minutes. Okay, thank you for your patience. I'm just going to answer the first batch of questions that have come in. And again, please do feel free to ask any additional questions on the right-hand side of your screen if you wish. The first question, what about collaborators in, for example, the Marine Institute of Chagos? Should they act as official collaborators? So yes, people from the Marine Institute of Chagos could act as academic collaborators. However, please note that these institutions are both eligible SFI research bodies, so could individuals from those organizations could also serve as funded investigators or co-PIs, for example, if they meet the relevant eligibility criteria. The second question, is there any minimum value of research funding secured for each of the lead applicant and co-applicants? Or is it only the total research funding requirement secured by the group? So there is a specific FAQ on this, FAQ number 3E. I'm not going to read out the FAQ now, but please be aware that all co-PIs and lead applicants would be expected to have a very strong track record of competitive research funding and also to be very competitive internationally. The third question, does exceeding the minimum industry cash contribution make an application more competitive, assuming research excellence and impact? The answer to this is that certainly that may signify a stronger industry relevance, and a number of previously funded research centres did in fact exceed the minimum requirements. A fourth question, can an existing co-PI of a research centre lead a new research centre proposal? No, this cannot happen. However, such individuals can serve as either co-PIs or funded investigators of new research centre proposals. A question, will the PowerPoint presentation be made available? Yes, we will put the PowerPoint presentation, including voiceover, on the Research Centre's 2016 webpage within the next couple of days. Okay, I'll just go offline again to gather some more questions and come back to you in a couple of minutes. Okay, just coming back again, thank you for your patience again. Just two final questions. The first question, will the abstracts submitted be shared? So no, we don't intend to share the abstracts. We would encourage research bodies to communicate amongst themselves and coordinate any bids. We would suggest that this happen at quite a senior level, at, for example, Vice President for Research level or similar. However, at the abstract stage, if we do receive abstracts which are clearly overlapping, we will notify the lead applicants on those particular abstracts. I've had a question asking to reiterate key dates. So just at the very start of the presentation, I said there are two very important dates. The first one, which I mentioned, was the deadline for submission of abstracts. That's the 4th of March 2016 at 1 p.m. The second was the deadline for submission of pre-proposals, and that's the 28th of April 2016 at 1 p.m. That concludes our webinar today. We don't have any additional questions. If you do have a follow-up question, please again refer to the Research Centre's program call document and FAQs. Secondly, contact your local research office, and subsequently, if your query cannot be answered, contact by email centres@sfi.ie. Thank you very much. That concludes our webinar. We will post a recording within the next couple of days on the Research Centre's Call 2016 webpage.